We're coming, and we ain't backing down.
We don't need a bunch of cats in here looking in the mirror. Hey, will you shut up?
I'm bitterly disappointed with the officiating today.
Guys being dudes.
And they run through our like through a tin horn, man.
Thank you, Lee. Tried to tell you about those Chiefs.
No, you did.
Yes, I did.
You said Spags was going to shut them down.
That is what he said.
Yes,
yeah.
I did. Besides that, I said Chiefs are going to win the game.
Your theory of the
Chiefs
game.
are going to win the game
because
because of the insane consensus around the Philadelphia Eagles last week.
Birthday boy.
Pick the Chiefs.
All right, Alex.
Chiefs won.
We have breaking news. Someone's
Happy
a birthday boy.
to me. I won a lot of money.
It's not me. I have stopped aging, but it's Richard's birthday. What if you guys caught up with me? God, that would be sweet.
I mean, there could be a way of that happening. I don't know.
I'm getting prettier, and I'm getting younger.
I mean, I don't know. Smoke enough cigarettes, drink enough on weeknights, and I mean, we could get there soon enough.
Whoa! I'm in the gym 5 days a week. I'm sober. Thank you.
Right. That's what I'm saying. If we wanted to catch up, that's how we could catch it.
We mapped out how we were going to do this before we hit record, and it did not involve me taking that wasn't even straight. I just took 3 to the face.
No, you misunderstood me, Steven. I'm saying that's how Richard and I, if we wanted to, could catch you.
Serial killer, folks. He is a serial killer.
As a running back, I'm about to begin my downturn. I'm never going to rush for 1,000 yards again. It's tough. Put me out to pasture, and I'll sail into retirement and join you. See in camp.
Second contract.
Is this 30?
The second contract?
This is 30. This is 30.
What?
Yeah, this is 30, baby.
Oh wait, we didn't discuss this. Forever in my mind, you're both 26.
I'm still close to 26. I'm a little north of there. 2 years north of there. But
wait, Richard, you're 30?
That's right.
Oh, wow. All right, Alex. I know we have to keep it tight because we have a lot to get to today, but wow. Oh my God. Come sit on the bench, young man. I have things to tell you.
I'm fucked.
You're still young enough to be like an
Richard's
Australian
not in his
punter.
20s anymore. This is the best news of the off season. One of you fuckers is old now.
There. Richard.
This is great.
I'm excited.
My hamstrings feel better already.
So do the AARP magazines start coming in the mail, or do you have to apply?
Joke.
How does that work?
Hey, no joke. I'm going to be totally honest, and Alex, I swear to God, we'll get out of the intro. When you re-up on your phone plan, I think everybody has an AT&T, T-Mobile, Verizon, basically one of those carriers. I was getting new iPhones and for me and the missus, and they were like, hey, the guy was afraid to say it. He's probably Alex's age and Alex's level of social politeness. And he was like, just so you know, there's a 15% one-time discount for AARP. And I looked at him and I said, excuse me, sir, I'm 40. And he said, it doesn't matter how old you are. And I was like, hey, sign that shit up right now. So for a year, I got the AARP magazine because I saved 15% on an iPhone. I don't give a shit, dude. Yeah. So magazine's terrible, by the way.
Happy for you. Richard, happy
Alex,
30th.
Get us out of here.
Conference review season rolls on. This week we've got 2 conferences, the Big 12 and Conference USA. We're going to start with the Big 12. I'd make you do every FBS conference.
No,
I do not discriminate.
This one was work. This one from the G5 guy.
I do.
I sat down and I was like, shit. Okay.
You don't discriminate, but I do.
We will begin with the Big 12 conference. If it's your first podcast, we're going to play Rose, Bud, Thorn. Rose, thing you really liked. Bud, thing that you saw emerge that you are curious about for the future. And Thorn, Oklahoma or something like that. And then we'll do a couple of superlatives as well at the end of this Big 12 conference review before we do Conference USA. Stephen Godfrey, your Rose, I want to throw it to you to start because you got the champs.
Took the easy one, took my beloved garbage disposals. Disposals? I'll have to work on the meme. That would be the beautiful purple people of Kansas State and lovely Kansas. It's not in Western Kansas. I know y'all jumped me in the Minchies, but
I think it's Eastern.
Manhattan. It's central-ish, or west of Topeka. Anyways, I love Manhattan, Kansas. I love Kansas State. I don't know why these is one of my little programs that I love so much, but I do. I want to go back to what I was hoping for in the preseason. I checked our notes. Do you guys remember it was going to be Adrian Martinez and Deuce, and it was going to be like, oh my God, they're going to run the veer. And I got really excited. They did not. And they did not because they had quarterback injuries, which is sort of the story of Will Howard's career. And that basically I believe it's three different quarterbacks in his time at Kansas State, he replaced someone who had a higher name value. This year it was Martinez. Oh my God, I'm blanking on the Texas transfer that he did this for the previous season. Oh man, that's going to kill me. Feel free to jump in. But this guy was never good as the replacement. He was never really that great until everything sort of clicked for him this year. That speaks to K-State. And when we get to our dudes of the year, I'll talk about the other side of the ball. But like K-State's a development program. Those things can still exist in the portal era. K-State is a scrap heap. And I say that do you know who their OC is? Everybody does this week because his name got popped for Notre Dame. It's Optimus Klein. It's Colin Klein. So if Kellen Moore made you feel old, like Colin Klein should make you feel really old, really fast.
I remember saying in the beginning of the season, I was really excited to see Adrian Martinez be a glorified running back in this offense.
Yeah, that's what I was talking about.
Game that they were going to be able to run. Yeah.
And they didn't because he got banged. I mean, nothing against Martinez. It was 2 injuries, and I don't know if it was 2 consecutive weeks. I know he went out again against Baylor. Look, Will Howard did it. Will Howard overcame 3 separate times. Again, didn't look great in the process, but this is a functional K-State. So this is the Kansas State that Bill Snyder built without Bill Snyder, he was always the necessary component. If you remember the gap between there, R.I.P. Ron Prince. He's alive. It's uncomfortable.
2007-ish.
It's uncomfortable for me to say this to K-State fans, and I get that, but it's also entirely necessary for this program to function at its peak without the architect. This is something that Virginia Tech still has not figured out. Okay? You have to be what you were within a modern context, and really, I think 2022 was a great example of being what you were within a modern context. So I think, Howard I kind of use as a narrative archetype, but this is a team that I also like. They were fun to watch, even when Oklahoma State forgot to practice that week, but like they were fun to watch consistently this season. And that's where they earned the nickname garbage disposal because they're not going to beat you in February. They're not going to beat you in the magazines in July, but they are going to beat you, and they are going to, make it so uncomfortable they can win the conference. I love them. And I could rant, but I won't.
This is now a durable franchise where, like, obviously Kansas State's going to have
good descriptor.
It's going to have its 5 to 8 win years, which obviously are very different, 5 and 8. But like, they're going to have their middle of the Big 12 years, but they are going to have these 9, 10, even historically a handful of 11 win seasons. Like, they're going to do that, and apparently they don't need a Snyder to be the head coach to do that.
And post Red River, Alex, I want to be clear. They're still going to have that 7, 8 win, 9. Like, they're not going to be a 12 win team just because Red River's leaving. But if I gave whatever the Power 5 moniker is worth moving forward, if I said you're going to be a Power 5 team and once every 4 to 5 years you're going to win the conference and just chainsaw everybody, and then you're going to be like kind of good for the rest of it, there's like 70 fan bases that would sign up for that.
Or more. But it's a good rose. Congrats to Kansas State for winning the Big 12 this year. Richard, another purple team in the Big 12 also deserves flowers this year. I think unquestionably. Also, it's Valentine's Day this week. It's really Rose Week. What you got for us?
Absolutely. TCU, man. TCU. Wow. Finished the season 13-0. A fantastic year for them. Won the Fiesta Bowl champions forever. 13-0 TCU Horned Frogs. Look, it was a lot of fun this season covering that team, being around that team. It's funny because, and I don't know if I've kind of really told like how I kind of sort of got on that beat, so to speak, but like it started because I was going for the other team. Right? Like I went to Kansas TCU because Kansas was hosting College Game Day, and that was really fun. It was fun, festive atmosphere.
That happened a couple times, right? Where you were going for the other team?
Yeah. That's what I'm saying. Like I went to Oklahoma State TCU because yes, TCU was undefeated, but like Oklahoma State at that time, we thought Oklahoma State was running it back from 2021. They were 5-0, I think that year or that game. Were up big, obviously, and whatever. It's the Oklahoma State show. Then I went to Texas because all right, well, like Texas could do this, right? Texas could kind of spoil this party and bring TCU back down to earth. And then finally, you go to the Big 12 championship game and it's like, all right, look, this is TCU's show. This is TCU's moment. This is TCU's hour. And then obviously the Fiesta Bowl, that the last game they played this season in the Fiesta Bowl against Michigan was a lot of fun to be at also. And,
that was their
and
last
to
game.
See that.
Yep.
Absolutely. And to see the arc of the season crest and finish there was really fun. It is really fun to be around a program that not that wants you to be there, because I'm sure if Sonny Dykes had his druthers, there'd never be any media anywhere because he's a football coach. But like to be around a team and a program that like is like, yeah, hey, you want to like talk to this player, you want to talk to this person, you want to talk to this assistant coach, you want to talk, like they just to be at a place that will work with you and be open with you. And it's not a dogfight to get somebody on the phone. And it's not a dogfight to tell the story of this program that America is meeting for the first time in general in its post Gary Patterson era, and the confluence of events that it was for them to do this under a new coach with like basically the same team. But the old coach is like a legitimate collegiate football coaching legend. And it was a lot of fun, and really and truly, I think TCU story is really special. It's quite obviously in my opinion, the most special kind of story that we've had in the playoff era, so far at least. I know it's pretty short lived, but yeah, man, TCU is a lot of fun, and I hope they're here to do this again. I mean, they opened the season against Colorado, and I think we're going to continue to talk about TCU here. The Big 12 parity is what it is, and we'll talk about that. But TCU being a mainstay in a different way in college football, right? Not just relying on a defense, that sort of thing. That sounds pretty cool to me.
I think Sonny likes the give and take. I think he's one of the rare college football coaches who enjoys media to some extent. And the basis that I have for that is that, like, so Richard and Godfrey talk to coaches, right? Like, that's what you guys do. You're college football reporters who spend a lot of time talking to the people who run college football teams. And that's sort of the way you've made your bones in this industry. I do much less of that. That's not really my role here. And Sonny Dykes answers, or not answers is inaccurate because it's present tense. He used to answer my text messages. So I cannot imagine how many other people he is doing that for. I think he likes talking to reporters and sort of keeping TCU in, actually, at this point, it was SMU sort of in a spotlight. I think he has a feel for that. And obviously, when you win however many games, it wound up being 12 total, I think, it gets easier to stay in that spotlight. Not to offer unqualified praise of the guy. He did just hire Kendall Briles, and that's going to be a whole other can of worms. It's going to come up repeatedly over the next year or how many at TCU. But TCU did everything that you want to do as far as like making your program be talked about, at least during the season. After, a little bit different. I don't know. I guess this would be time to do a rose for a team that finished 1-7 this season, but that nonetheless kind of feels like you have to give them flowers. I think we did a rose.
I think we did a rose for a team with a losing record on one of these episodes recently. So like you're within your rights to do this.
Yeah, sure. And actually, Kansas had a losing record by the end of the year. They finished 6-7 with their bowl loss.
I have this in the bud, so we can kind of package these together.
Okay, yeah, let's do that. I have Kansas as a rose.
Okay, I was gonna say I would vindicate Alex automatically for being a rose. A bud, I feel like that's a challenge. But go ahead.
So I think the case for Kansas being a rose is just sort of to appreciate what they did for the first half of this season. I don't know exactly where it's going, and I'm going to leave that to Richard when he talks about Kansas as a bud in a second here. But they started 5-0. They had a game day game that they almost won against a team that turned out to go to and win a game in the college football playoff. They had a top 10 offense by SP+. Don't ask about their defense because it was not top 10, which is the reason why they wound up losing 7 games. But I think that there is, first of all, what just happened is worth appreciating on its own. Like, Kansas does not have so many seasons where that program makes a bowl game and is for some period of time the talk of college football. They also could have gotten 1 or 2 more wins against pretty good teams. I mentioned TCU. They almost had Oklahoma. Texas Tech and Arkansas were very winnable games. Arkansas, of course, in their bowl game. And any of that would have made their record prettier than it wound up being. But like, Lance Leipold can build an offense, man. Like, he can, and he is one of the few coaches who I think, even if you are not a scheme savant, which I certainly don't consider myself. Like, you can look at the way his teams played at Buffalo and you can look at the way they play at Kansas now and understand conceptually why this is a pain in the ass to play against. You never know who has the ball. Like, you're watching on TV and you can't tell who has the ball when there are people running in opposite horizontal directions and then vertical directions. And I think if it's hard to find it on a TV screen, it's really hard to find it if you are a linebacker who is being made to flow in directions where the ball isn't going by motion men who don't have it. It's a ton of fun to watch. I guess Lance Leipold, Godfrey, is like not quite sexy enough for the other big ticket Midwestern jobs, a couple of which he was mentioned for loosely this year. You know, we talked about him for Nebraska. We talked about him for Wisconsin. So he's sticking around. They got players sticking around. They are second in the early Bill C returning production ratings for next year behind just Florida State. So, I mean, I like what I'm seeing. Also, they made the backup quarterback, Jason Bean, like really, really good this year. It wasn't just Jaden Daniels. So, Jalen Daniels. The J Daniels there's so many J Danielses in college football right now.
Not your fault.
But Kansas is doing a really nice job.
Lance is very sexy. Okay. No, it's just those two jobs we're looking for. I'm going to be very careful here. Nebraska needed a marquee above the title name, to use Hollywood parlance, because of Nebraska problems. Lance would have killed it there, no doubt. It's just they weren't willing to go down that route, that path, that's a Nebraska decision, not a referendum on Lance. And then Wisconsin was just kind of a logjam. I mean, that's the one. He's from Wisconsin. That's the one I think he really would have jumped at. But I mean, Wisconsin, we don't have to rehash this now. We've done it on the Patreon several times, splitzoneduo.com. But like, they thought they had their head coach, you know, when they fired Paul Chryst, they thought they had him on staff, and now it's Luke Fickell. So it's like, I don't know if I'm measuring Lance Leipold's worth against that.
Very fair. Richard, give me your Bud case as we move to Buds for the same Kansas Jayhawk team as you look to, you know, what they may or may not be 2023 and beyond.
Bud case, I think you, first and foremost, you look at the fact that they're bringing the quarterback back. Now, yes, he got hurt midway through the season. That was a weird, that got weird with his injury and like whether he was going to come back or not. That got odd. But he's coming back next year. He can spin it, man. Like for real spin it. I really like him as a player. I think that a lot of the offense, and it's funny to bring the razzle dazzle up. They are running that because they have to. They're running that because of personnel. I think
in terms of tempo,
that misdirect. No, not the tempo, the misdirection and the
Gotcha.
razzle dazzle that Alex was bringing up. You know, would Lance would Lance prefer to just line it up and run it? Sure.
Mm-hmm.
He coaches at Kansas, man. You can't just line it up and run it.
What if you build it out of nothing but statues of liberty?
Exactly. And so it's a lot of fun. Again, as Alex said, the defense, but I think you look at what Kansas is doing from an investment standpoint, facilities, folks, if you've been in that stadium, it's tough. It's tough.
Got that track. Got that track.
But I think Kansas is investing facilities as far as I kind of understand about their NIL and on that point, they're in a good spot there. Obviously, the money's always going to come. The supplemental income is always going to come from the basketball team because the basketball team ain't going to stop winning. I like Kansas, the infrastructure that Kansas is building athletic department wise to support this football team into varying versions of this.
Yeah.
Are we saying Kansas is going to win the national championship?
No.
Yes, that's what I just said. Varying versions of this. And I think if you do this every couple years and you're a Kansas football fan, I'm sure you're like, all right, cool, sign me up.
I know they don't have the track anymore. Save the mentions, please.
Don't they still have like don't they still have like kind of the one open end of the stadium that's a bit track like?
No,
like, yeah, dude, I'm not trying to bag. I'm not trying to bag on Kansas right now when I just called them a bud. But yeah, they have they have temporary sweet infrastructure in one end zone that is the open end.
But there's a lot of schools that, I mean, like there's still the Rock M crap in Columbia. Like, wow, I
How did you
know
go
what?
right to
I know,
Missouri?
I know, dude. Because in my head, I closed my eyes and I thought of like end zones with grass and shit in them in the P5, and those idiots that sit on the rocks. Get at me, journalism grads.
Godfrey's throwing a bone to any Kansas fans who Richard might have just offended by taking on Missouri. Not that they care. Not that they care.
I'm a K-State grad anyway.
Not that they care.
In agricultural science. I'm actually a farmer. I know there's no track. Get out of the mentions. My bud is actually, here's a transition off. Look, Alex and Richard did sort of the defense kind of bit, but it's the Big 12. It's hard to build a defense, and that's okay. And when you're coming out of the doldrums the way Kansas was, I think you do grade that on a pretty significant curve. Now, speaking of defense schmeh, I don't know why this turned into a Borscht Belt bit. Let's talk about Texas Tech, because in 3 of their 4 wins to close out the year, they had technically a good scoring defense. And that's wins against Kansas, Iowa State, who sucked, but then also Ole Miss in the bowl game. And don't feed me that we didn't care as a bullshit. They played the game. That's your problem, okay? And they didn't have a massive amount of people sitting out either. Look, I'm not saying this thing on defense isn't still Texas Tech technically, but it is definitely encouraging. And I think Texas Tech's Joey McGuire salvo was encouraging. They also look, they went to a bowl. They beat an SEC team flat out, full stop. Great progress there for a program of Texas Tech's caliber. By the way, also, they're having a good week. Mahomes just won another Super Bowl. Zach Thomas, Pro Football Hall of Fame. I know these things are just sort of in the periphery, but still, good week to be a Red Raider, I guess. They just signed the number 26 class nationally, which is their best since 2011. Now, we're not hardcore doctrine, rigid religious stars matter people on this show.
No, but
when you see a trend, you see a trend, and there is I think validity to that. The other thing that's really interesting to me is they signed a lot of defensive talent in that class, and most of it is coming from in the state of Texas. So, folks, we're seeing my favorite 3 words. What are my favorite 3 words when I'm talking about the trajectory of any program? Folks, it's proof of concept. You hired a guy who was a Texas high school football architect. He is architecting your college football program with Texas high school talent.
And I think it's significant that it held up pretty well over an entire cycle. We did a show before the season even started, because at one point last summer, Texas Tech was actually number 1 in the recruiting rankings, if you'll remember.
Yeah.
Summer recruiting number 1 is one of my favorites.
It is. But there's a reason we talked about it. Everyone knew, yes, Texas Tech was not going to stay number 1 in recruiting.
Right.
But what they had done, according to a couple of people who we talked to at the time, who were involved in or on other recruiting operations in the state of Texas at different schools, was that they were deliberately loading up early with Texas high school players to generate buzz, to show people, hey, yeah, look at us. We're back. We're recruiting Texas high schools in a portal era. We're going to be the high school operation that lives and dies with Texas high school football. And then of course it fell off, because Texas Tech is never in a million years going to sign the number 1 class in the country, but it held up pretty well. And you're kind of seeing a Big 12 version of what Jeff Traylor has successfully done at UTSA, what Texas State is probably now going to try to do after firing the guy who wouldn't recruit high schools at all. Texas Tech's doing it well by the looks of it.
So someone tell the SCD intern to take a note here. I would posit that once we have enough of a data set, you could see some evidence that you would have less portal reliance in this style of blueprint, where you're in a place where the players are from. And if you are establishing relationships early on, not just with the kids when they're 14 at the camps, but with their coaches and their support structure on a very fundamental local level, like this is why you do the Jeff Traylor thing, the Joey McGuire thing, that you would see less transfer out and less reliance. Now, I'm not saying that Texas Tech in any given year wouldn't use the portal to complement, but the portal's designed to complement. We've talked about that. I think you would see much more of that model as we go 5 years, 6 years deep into the portal system. I think that's a measure of success by going this route. Yes, Alex.
Let me, by the way, since we're talking about Texas Tech recruiting, and this is just sometimes, the gods help us with timing. Did you guys see the biggest fucking lie anyone has ever spouted about recruiting in college football history that came from the mouth of a certain former Texas Tech head coach who is now a U.S. Senator just this morning as we talk about this?
Get it in.
So Tommy Tuberville.
I don't know where we're going yet.
Tommy Tuberville.
I don't even want.
Tommy Tuberville is talking about
Texas Tech head coach is a generous descriptor for Tommy Tuberville.
Generous descriptor. He's holding court. I think he's talking about how there should be a federal name, image, and likeness law, whatever. And someone asks him a question about the Super Bowl.
That's fine.
And he winds up going on a tangent where he says, quote, "I'm a Kansas City fan." And then there's an ellipsis. It's just a tweeted quote from a National Journal correspondent, Savannah Behrman. And he says, "But I'm a Kansas City fan. I recruited Pat Mahomes when I was at Texas Tech."
Oh.
Does that pass the smell test?
It does not pass the smell
So
test, as numerous people pointed out. The
I just
timelines
wrote-
do not match up
Not at all.
Okay.
I can
At
tell you
all.
off the top of my head with no show note. Like we're doing this on the cuff right now. I just wrote a
How off is he?
like way off. I just wrote a rewinder for Secret Base
It's a
about
sophomore.
Mahomes. Yeah, Mahomes. So when Mahomes was a sophomore in high school, this is why he starts prepping for the MLB draft. Because he's at an overlooked school and he's undersized and he's not getting the looks. And he is also still splitting almost 50-50, if not 60-40 baseball. Because by the way, his dad was a pitcher in the majors. He pitched for the Rangers and a couple other teams.
Twins.
Twins, yeah. So like, I just wrote this. I just did all this research for a Secret Base video on Mahomes because it's his second season in the league. He throws for 50 touchdowns because he's fucking Patrick Mahomes. There's no fucking way that Senator Tuberville, I think I have his cell phone. There's no way that there's no fucking way they had tape on him. If they had tape on him, it was a coaster. There's no way.
What?
He was I'm interested. This is
Cliff
fucking
grabbed
hilarious.
him like
He's
oh my god. We're
so
gonna
he was a
stop the whole
sophomore in
show.
high school in Tuberville's last fall.
Something like that. Yeah, he was not a junior or a senior. And Tuberville's reputation for, let's say, evaluating and acquiring talent after his Auburn years was such that, no, you do not get the
sat
benefit
in a
of the
recruiting
doubt.
meeting at Cincinnati. It was dog shit. I'll say that.
The only guy who
Wasn't
can't
the
win at
bit that
Cincinnati.
What wasn't the bit that like Mac Brown recruited Pat as a safety or something?
No, that was Cam Newton, I think.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
That's not right
it
either,
was
but it'll come
obviously
back
was
to
a
me in a
black
second.
quarterback. No. So anyway, just to be clear, one of the most easily disprovable lies in the history of recruiting, said by U.S. Senator Tommy Tuberville this week. Very, very
So
exciting.
here's the specific story, and I'm digging up my notes from Secret Base. B.J. Anderson was recruiting East Texas for A&M when Kingsbury was the OC for Sumlin at A&M. Okay, they found a tape. They got a tape in like a slush pile of Mahomes. All right, he's from White House, and BJ hands it to Cliff and is like, "This is your kind of dude, right?" And then I'm looking at the multiple clips that I had in my notes here. Kingsbury was like, he was raw. He was definitely the best player on the field in any game. Da 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 da. Then Kingsbury goes to Tech and is like, all right, we have to adjust our recruit. You know, it's like one of those like, who can I get to Tech things? Then they chase his ass when he gets to Tech to basically build a class around him. My point is, oh, fuck. Okay. We're doing this live on the air and it's going to be super unprofessional, but like, I'm guaranteeing that Tommy Tuberville did not know who Patrick Mahomes was.
Oh, there's basically
no
chance. There's basically no chance. And if he did, he would have left him at dinner when he walked out. When he just skipped. Remember how he left Texas Tech? Just like literally left recruits at the dinner table. Anyway, I actually think as I look this up.
Oh, here we go.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
So there is a potential here, but they were not recruiting him. So they knew who he was and they weren't recruiting him. Now this is an ESPN. This is, by the way, this shit, it took me 2 seconds to pull my notes up and then Google. I don't know this guy, Josh Winefuss. This is a story from fucking 7 months ago. Okay. Kingsbury gets to Tech and finds out that the previous staff knew about him. But because the only reason why was they had recruited a wide receiver from White House. So then Kingsbury was like, okay, well, we have one of it. Tech has recruited one of the receivers. So now we can put like a full on push on here.
He was. I actually just pulled up his 247. His offer from Texas Tech was in January.
Yes.
Of 2013.
He did
so
not
the junior
have
day that he went to in 2013.
Yes, and I think I put this in the video that you can watch. You just go on YouTube and Google Patrick Mahomes Rewinder. Like, if not Texas Tech, he wasn't gonna play P5.
So I just looked this up, and actually in February 2020, Tuberville told the Washington Post that he was responsible not only for Texas Tech getting Patrick Mahomes, but also Baker Mayfield. I will read from the passage in the Washington Post.
Read from the good word.
The reporter says, in fact, Tuberville says, when he departed Texas Tech, he left the Red Raiders with none other than Baker Mayfield and Patrick Mahomes, a future Heisman Trophy winner and a future NFL MVP. That doesn't happen very often, the former coach says. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. We cannot let him get away with this. I can't believe we just spent 10 minutes on this. But sometimes when you see the most egregious lie you've ever heard in recruiting, and it's said by a public servant, I guess you have to podcast about it.
See the hole, hit the hole, baby.
Let's do thorns. I'll skip my bud. My bud was the very survival of the Big 12, which we can talk about more at a later date. Thorns. There were several of those this year. I'm going to take West Virginia being allowed to wilt under Neil Brown. I don't think WVU could ever have like a total apathy situation in that fan base because they're very committed and there just isn't another game in town really in West Virginia sports. Like Mountaineer football is always going to be the deal. It's not like they're going to hemorrhage fans to Marshall or to Pitt for that matter. It's kind of a Nebraska light situation as I see it in that way. But I think that still they're in a dangerous place right now where I think their fan base is not particularly happy that this guy continues to be in the job, especially after they ousted the athletic director who had hired him. And I think a lot of them expected that Neil Brown would follow him out the door shortly thereafter. Did not happen. A worse year than several of the decent years he's had before. Never good when you bring in a transfer quarterback, JT Daniels, and that quarterback comes for 1 year, doesn't go well, and then transfers again. Granted, that might be a JT Daniels thing at this point. I think this will be his fourth school. Where's he going now?
I think he is about to start his fourth. Where
is he going, by the way?
School.
Anyone know?
Rice.
Yes, it's Rice. Exactly.
Rice.
I have left the program to start texting coaches about. I'm sorry, y'all killed me. I'm done. I don't even know if I can keep going.
The Tuberville thing.
I'm like, I'm texting anyone who's ever touched Tommy Tuberville or North Texas and be like, y'all, who is letting this happen? Why are there not 25 coaches right now being like, fuck you? Because he's a senator?
I think it's a good question. On the WVU point, I have a weird affection for West Virginia that I don't understand why I have it as a Pitt person. But
yeah, I was going to say,
but I just would like to see this program be something again. Be a top of its conference team, which it has been and can be, and that gets people excited. And I think they're kind of at a dangerous point where that's not really happening. And if you look at what they have coming up early in 2023. They're going to Penn State the first week of the year. They're going to lose that game. They play an FCS game. Pitt comes to Morgantown. If they lost that, damn, that would not be good. And then it's Texas Tech and TCU being on the road. Like you might know by their bye week next year that things are really, really going in a bad direction. And they might just be delaying their reset by a little bit. So West Virginia is my thorn. Godfrey.
My thorn is the state of Alabama for electing Tommy Tuberville. That's not true because
reasonable.
Marjorie Taylor Greene would completely fuck up Georgia State too. So, all right, Oklahoma State. Do y'all remember when we talked in August about like this post Red River conference that was going to be dominated, that Oklahoma State was going to be a Tiffany brand by virtue of like, oh wow, look how they finally look how they had their most recent successful season. Look at Jim Knowles. Look at the way that they were winning games. Look at getting the Bedlam monkey off your back. Does anyone remember that? Like, if you're a Cowboys fan, I want you to take the product of 2022 and show me how it built in any way, shape, or form off of 21. In any way, give me anything. I didn't check the kicking game. I want to know how this pivoted. I want to know how this is not just going right back to Gundy basics. And I don't mean that as a compliment. I'm open. I'm open to suggestion. I won't keep talking about this. Hit me in the mentions.
Well, Derek Mason's gone now. Derek Mason's
D-Mace,
like, I'm good.
D-Mace looked around and realized, oh God, you know what? I actually do have enough money to not do this, and I need to get the fuck out of here.
Guy, not financially.
Derek Mason is
that's his
Derek Mason
fault.
has had a
You know
couple
what he's
years.
done the last 2 years? The too many he's worked for.
Yeah.
Yes, because D-Mace needs to take, because coaches
Godfrey, tell everyone.
take
Tell
a
everyone.
minute.
Tell everyone who he's worked for the last 2 years.
So Derek Mason, after I think really doing yeoman's work at Vanderbilt with no support, one of the things that makes Clark Lee successful already is what he's doing behind the scenes. Like, they did a groundbreaking last week on major facilities renovations. And what I mean by that at Vanderbilt is that they don't even have they have no boxes, and they have no seats with backs on them. Like, I could go on about Vanderbilt. One of the things that Clark Lee as an alumnus and a Nashvilleian has been able to do is help put foots in asses. And they also have a new AD in Candace Story-Lee who's actually making people do things. Derek Mason didn't have any of those luxuries and did a really good coaching job. If you go back and look at some of those games, the talent differentials in the SEC, then he gets fired, which was going to happen. Then he's the defensive coordinator for Brian Harsin at Auburn. And he decides, you know what? Like, I took a baseball bat to the teeth for a football season. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to go to Stillwater, Oklahoma and work for Mike Gundy. And now, thankfully, I've talked to a couple people that know Mason. He's just going to take some time off, because you should. This is self-harming behavior. This is where someone should create an intervention circle and be like, Mace, you have the money. Your family's fine. I think his daughter still a student athlete at Florida? Like,
I don't know if she's still there.
But like,
she was
take time. Just dude, take a year. Take a year.
He might be. Sound like he is.
No, but I'm saying like take a breath. And then go DC on the West Coast, or I mean, the dude could have an NFL career. There's a myriad things he could be doing other than DCing for like lost causes and assholes.
I will take the other team in this state. Oklahoma's defense was fucking terrible. And I don't mean, look, it's been not so great in the past. They've gone to the playoff with a not so awesome defense. I'm not saying that. I point back to the TCU game as like the defense was like structurally broken in that game. Like, TCU actually just wrecked them on the back end. OU came in playoff. I don't know if
playoff adjacent, but and they were in fact adjacent, for 5-6 weeks of the season.
Yeah, you want to talk about a result that I think fooled us at the time? That spanking of Nebraska that they had, I was like, all right, we got something here early with Oklahoma. Yeah. And then it just look, they lost Kansas State before. I understand that. And then they go to TCU and just get the breaks. And then they were uncompetitive against Texas. They were not competitive against Texas in Red River. And you're just like, what is going on here?
That's a really nice way to describe Red River.
Which, by the way, raises a separate point, which is that as I look over our run of the Big 12 here, none of us has Texas for anything. It was neither a disappointing nor exciting year.
Wait, I got one. Nope. Okay, I got one.
Okay,
it's coming.
Okay, it's coming. I'll let you get there.
Hey man,
well, my thorns.
You didn't think I was gonna spare a low blow? Like, come on, bud. I got it.
That's right.
My actual thorn is Quinn Ewers cutting the mullet.
Your actual thorn is Quinn Ewers what, Richard?
Cutting the mullet.
Cutting the mullet.
Oh. The mullet. I think the mullet thing is come and gone, and we're good now. Although, did y'all see the NC State offensive lineman? I think he's an offensive lineman who has a tattoo. Do you guys even know who the band Poison is?
Of course.
Brett Michaels. Yeah.
Wow. Okay, I'm gonna take a minute and appreciate that. But anyway, this 80.
Godfrey, I'm 30, man.
Oh my God, fuck! It's the beginning. Hey, you're never wrong. Now you're just late. This weird thing where Zoomer kids doing 80s hair metal looks. I think that's kind of run its course. I mean, mullet if you want to, but it was everywhere for a hot minute. I think it's kind of on the decline.
And remember, before the season started, Oklahoma fired an offensive line coach who said the N-word in a meeting, probably.
Oh wait,
that was a weird situation.
Dude, I forgot completely about that.
It was like they were firing him with tears in their eyes and talking about
They were graduating him.
No, remember, they had to put 2 statements out about it. They put out 2 statements.
And then I do believe that a family member of the fired coach began to undermine the official word I don't like to focus on like what coaches' daughters say. It's not really
the second statement was like literally the drill tweet where it was like, it turns out you do not in fact have to hand it to him. Like it really was the drill tweet. We got to get back on. Oh my God, help me here, Alex.
Weird, dude. It got weird.
The weird thing is like, hey, Dylan Gabriel, like not bad throughout all that, not bad.
No, yeah, I would agree.
No, not bad. Just did not have the support to do what a typical Oklahoma quarterback does.
You could slap a big shipping label that says program in transition over 22, but their shit better look clean in September.
Yeah. All right. Some superlatives here. Ugly game of the year. I'll just keep it on Bedlam. Oklahoma went up 28-0 and then didn't score the rest of the game. And so it was sufficiently ugly kind of for everybody, but mainly for Oklahoma State. Another kind of
weird. What a transitive year, Alex. What a transitive year.
Well, the Big 12 was a circular firing squad this year.
But I'm thinking of like the perpetual dominance of Oklahoma State over Texas and how we always get our lulls off that way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Then I'm thinking about Red River, and now I'm thinking about Bedlam. Like, y'all need to sort the shit out. Write a better script.
I would also honorable mention for ugly game of the year the TCU Texas game where
not honorable mention. That's my mention.
Okay, Richard, give us this one because this was kind of ugly in a certain way.
That game was fucking terrible. Remember that TCU wins that game 17-10.
That's right.
17-10 because a second level defender for Texas like unplugs his controller and Kendre Miller runs for like 70 yards. And then there was a coverage bust that was so bad. Quentin Johnston jumped in the air to catch a touchdown pass because he didn't realize how open he was. That was the two scores for TCU in that game. The only score Texas had in that game was returning a fumble for a touchdown with like 5-ish minutes to go when TCU was trying to salt the game away. It was a wretched game of football to watch. TCU pulled it out, and bully for you, Horned Frogs. But it was not fun in the process as someone who was in attendance.
Stephen Godfrey.
Here's my shot. Actually, that's not true. The media has a bad habit of looking back, and TCU Texas is a good example of seeing close scoring game and going like, oh, it was invariably good because it was close. That is not always the case. Some games are just like evenly shitty. 24-21, Texas escaping Iowa State. If you I actually saw pieces of this game, like in one of those viewing blocks where you're like, I'm gonna try and keep my eye on 4 at once. It never works. Iowa State fumbled the ball away on the Texas 28 to basically end the game. So that's how Texas secured this win. All right. On a play that went to review that the forced fumble probably could have also been a targeting by Texas. So that's how close this game swings. The reason that this is my like shitty game of the year basically is that this is like 2 or 3 weeks later, and now at the end of the season, when you go back and see the media, like the write-ups, the actual newspaper gamers, and then like how people talked about this game was like, this was the game that the previously 5-7 Texas learned how to be tough. Like, no, it wasn't. Iowa State was shit, and you played to their level at home for most of the game. That's
big drop pass for Iowa State as well as the fumble. That was tough.
Iowa State led 21-17. I think it was with about 9 or 10 minutes left in this game. This was like Quinn comes in and throws 3 touchdowns, and like I get that, but like if you go back and I was looking at the drive charts on this is just a bad football game. And when you look at it in context with the way that we talk about Texas, because this is the way Texas wants to be talked about, they held serve against Alabama weeks prior to this. So when you are constantly playing at the level of an opponent and then occasionally brain farting your way through like a crucial game to build a schedule resume, that's Texas. That's the Texas we've known forever. And it doesn't mean just because you went to a bowl and lost to Washington this year that you are markedly better than the 5-7 team from a season prior. We have to suss this out. And just as a tease, Alex, we're going to talk a lot about the reality of Texas and what they're about to do in 24 and beyond in a very pragmatic way on the Patreon this week, splitsunduo.com.
Yeah, Texas was better than it was the year before, but that's not saying a lot. I think you could make a thorn case for them.
It's just marginal to me.
You could make a thorn case. In fact, we could have easily done this for Iowa State, which won 1 game in the Big 12, that being against West Virginia. and just like
Rents come and do that.
Really couldn't play offense at all. They were
It's
kind of
Iowa State though.
Yeah, but Steven, we're not that far removed from them playing in the Big 12 championship and being like a kind of trendy, like maybe long shot playoff preseason pick a couple years ago.
My guy missed his connecting flight out of Ames. This happens.
Yeah, it seems rough there. Also,
See,
Baylor
also
could have been a thorn.
Latrell Seth. Like these things happen.
Baylor could have been a thorn this year. Wasn't 6-7, and I had a terrible run to end the season. Right after winning the Big 12. So the Big 12 had a number of really rough seasons this year, but that's business. My actual game of the year kind of keeps with this theme. Texas Tech over Texas in week 4. Texas had this and let it get away. It was probably one of the more had to have it, should have it, did have it losses that any team took all season. But for Texas Tech, it was great. And I think that one of the things that the Big 12 will miss is that there's just nothing more fun for these teams than beating Texas or Oklahoma on your at your own field or on their field for that matter. Beating Baylor is just not the same as beating Texas. And it was cool to see Texas Tech get that moment. That was kind of the first sign that they were going to have a nice first year under Joey McGuire. And you'd love to see it, unless you're a Longhorn, in which case you do not.
You do not, in fact, love to see it. Mine is easy. And I'll be short and sweet because everybody knows exactly, like you can see it in your mind's eye. And that's what makes a great moment in college football. It's I'm going to Dutch the pronunciation, the Revivalry walk-off hurry-up field goal.
It is weird that you call it that, man.
The Revivalry?
Yeah, man.
Why?
Let him be.
I didn't come up with that name.
Mm-hmm.
We have SCD members who are graduates of both sides who have given me wildly varying info. And I know there's some TCU friends that are probably listening to this, and I think they don't like it. That I've had Baylor people say, like, we do like it. It's the Revivalry. It's okay. I didn't make it up. Anyway, it's the walk-off hurry-up field goal because, look, how many times do you get to see a new thing in football? And that was in a lot of, and it's not technically new, but you were like, oh, holy shit! Wow, that was awesome. Sick. And that's it. It was in a rivalry game. It was on a national title push. So you have all my forms of narrative and stuff. Yeah, it was great. It was a really fun moment. And then to Alex's point earlier, Sonny's just chewing scenery in the post game talking about it. Like it was a fun thing that got celebrated by everyone involved after the fact, which is also not that common.
I liked how Sonny Dykes was immediately after the game, the sideline reporter was like, hey, that was kind of a fire drill there, huh? And he's like, nope, planned it, practiced it.
He's like, fuck no, we could have done it a second shorter.
Damn right.
That's the kind of fun part of college football that we don't get a lot because we have a bunch of little homebrewed despots in the Southeastern Conference who are like, fuck no, we practice it, fuck you, compete every day. That's what's fun about Sonny Dykes.
The Big 12 title game. Big 12 title game was fantastic. Yeah. I will, and I think I've said this before on the show or what have you, the endearing image in my head of Max Duggan's performance in that game. When he essentially tied the game, or brought them back, they tied the game at the end of regulation, and then the game ended and everybody went home right as the regulation whistle ended at the end of the fourth quarter. It was fantastic. It was a fantastic performance from Max Duggan in all seriousness. Seeing Max Duggan at the end of the game after they did lose, just with the emotion of him in that moment, realizing that, we all pretty much were kind of sure that they were going to go to the playoff because of how close that game ended up being. But how much it mattered in the moment to him and his teammates was really special. And also conference title games don't really always get that atmosphere.
No,
obviously it's usually Alabama beating a sister of the poor from the East or Georgia beating not Alabama from the West. You know what I mean? It's when Georgia and Alabama are in that game, it's awesome.
Richard just called LSU sisters of the poor.
That's right. Clemson in its ACC coronations, the atmosphere is never that good. It's just a bunch of Clemson fans. But it was fantastic to be in that atmosphere, split 50-50, everybody hype, both sides, competitive, close game, felt like they wanted to win it, could win it. Either way, how that thing swung.
That building too is hard to have vibes in.
Yes.
That building
Yes,
is
it is.
so, and it's just sterile, you know?
SED Dude of the Year picks, couple of them who were in that game. I'm going to take Quentin Johnston. This is a kind of prototypical big, fast wide receiver who's just going to beat you with physical tools. Mike Tomlin's term, the goon wideout, applies. Just someone who will like physically bully you.
I love Mike Tomlin. I hate the Steelers, but I love Mike
Tomlin's
Tomlin.
terminology for everything is pretty much my favorite thing about the Steelers at this point.
The all black Nike thing I learned that I actually knew about and didn't know. I didn't know that was a black Twitter thing, but it was always that I would wear those when I was a dishwasher and I worked in restaurants. But apparently it also like that's part of the etymology of the black Nikes because it's someone who's like you don't want to mess with, who's like hard labor. Anyway, sorry, I could go about Mike Tomlin. I think he's great.
Wouldn't be surprising if Mike Tomlin wanted to go and grab a Quentin Johnston. Like last year, they grabbed the Quentin Johnston of that draft, being George Pickens.
They sure did.
But I enjoy watching this guy play. It's funny because the Big 12 has had so many receivers post such absurd numbers that Johnston this season for him isn't even near the top of the list. You know, this was not, I think he had less yards this year, fewer yards than Xavier Hutchinson and Marvin Mims. But it wasn't like a Justin Blackmon or a Stedman Bailey or a Des Bryant or a Crabtree or a James Washington Big 12 season. He only had 98 targets.
He was also playing very hurt.
Oh yeah, and he wasn't targeted all that much, but it was just go deep and catch the ball. And he also did some creative. It wasn't all deep balls. Remember, he scored
or catch a screen and
exactly.
Take it 40 yards.
He scored on the crossing screen against Michigan from very far away. You know, Georgia did certain things to him that were unkind in the national championship game. But
did they play Georgia?
I'm hearing that they might have. It might have been a dream. But other than that game, if it happened, nobody could do anything about this guy. And it was a great season worth commemorating. So that's my dude of the year.
My dude of the year, I want to get this right because it does matter. Felix and Udike Uzama, defensive end from Kansas State. Again, to sort of go back full circle on my love of the garbage disposal, 8.5 sacks and 11 TFL. That's a good stat line, but it's a great stat line when he was sort of the only guy that was going to come and pass rush for K-State. He was doubled a lot. He was, boxed out, whatever you want to call it, bracketed, whatever you want to call it. He was getting the attention from the O-line, still put up a really amazing season, largely unheralded, came out of Garden City, Missouri. Like, just that's the case. Garden City, Missouri. I don't think that's right. He's the K-State guy. He's the blueprint. He's the guy that they developed 2-time now, back-to-back defensive lineman of the year in the Big 12. This is like a sign of health for that program when they produce these guys that you're probably going to be watching like a Monday or Thursday night NFL game next year. You're going to see him, and it's going to be one of those guys that even as sort of like a really active college football fan, you're going to be like, oh, wait, shit, where did he play? Oh, of course, he's a K-State kind of guy. Like, that's what they develop.
I am not going to let us get out of here without giving Bijan Robinson a Lifetime Achievement Award, SCD Dude of the Year. Like, Bijan Robinson, first of all, Bijan Robinson is going to be the guy. Bijan Robinson is going to be one of those classic Texas guys who's like, oh, he played at Texas. How the fuck did they not win more games with this guy or that guy or those two guys? Like, if he doesn't break his arm
so
last
he's AJ
season,
Brown.
Yeah.
Or DK Metcalf. Or Dawson Knox.
I mean, if he doesn't break his arm last year, he might have won the Heisman. Like, we forget that.
Yeah.
To be honest with you.
Yeah.
He was, I mean, I know 2020 was kind of weird, but like almost from day one, the guy was absolutely box office every single time he touched the field. And this season, especially kind of in, Alabama shut him down pretty good, but like besides that, he really produced every single game bar none. He is the archetype of modern running back. Incredible balance, incredible body control, incredible power and speed, the balance of it. And I cannot wait to watch him in the NFL.
There's going to be, because this is how it is now, right? Like anytime a running back gets drafted early,
like
there's like,
Christ.
you're wasting it. You don't have to. And I understand the position wide track record is not good for running backs getting picked high at this point in the draft. I'm telling you, get over it. Get over it with this. Don't overthink it. Like I would pick this guy very early in the NFL draft and feel delighted about it. And if your offensive coordinator can't figure out how to use him, he's an asshole. and I don't care about him. And you need to
I
fire
mean,
your offense
my
coordinator.
NFL head coach got his head coaching job because of Derrick Henry. So, like, just give me a back that looks close to that, and I think I'm headed in a successful direction.
I think that's a great plan.
So willing to compromise for success right now. Just okay.
That is the Big 12 conference review.
We're done.
That's it.
Compromising for success. The Big 12.
So I want to do a quick bit of podcast business, then we'll do Conference USA as well. First of all, as we mentioned on the show last week, on March 3rd, it's a Friday, we are going to be in Indianapolis with our dear friends at Home Field Apparel. We're going to see them, hang out with them, and we are going to go to Gugman House Brewing. The flyer for the event is on our Twitter at Split Zone Duo and on our Patreon as well, but unlocked for all to see at patreon.com/SCD. We're going to be there for about 3 hours, starting at 5 p.m. There's a cash beer bar, free to enter. We'll order some food for the group as well. Nice group of RSVPs there, just a chance to hang out, have SCD listeners meet other SCD listeners, home field fans meet other home field fans. Our group will be in the Boyle Racing Shop there on the first Friday, the 3rd of March. And I don't know, just go where all of the people wearing home field are, because that will be where we are. You should go to homefieldapparel.com if you are looking to outfit yourself for that or any other event. Premium, vintage, extremely comfortable collegiate apparel. As we've talked about time and again, our longest standing partners on this show, dear friends of ours, who also happen to be the makers of the finest college sports wares in all of the land. If you haven't ordered from Home Field yet, use the code SZD. Yep, and the Colts too. SZD20, SCD20 for 20% off your first order. You can Google Split Zone Duo Home Field as well, and you'll see our collection there. A whole bunch of Split Zone Duo shirts, crews, etc. That I think would make a great addition to your closet. Thanks to you and thanks to Home Field. Also, do you guys know what I did last week in the middle of the week with another one of our dear podcast partners? What'd you do, Alex? Transition. I went to
Called the hogs in a parking lot?
I did call the hogs in a parking lot. I went to Colorado to go and drive very expensive cars that are not my own, on an ice track with our friends at Nokian Tires at their big tire testing event. And wow, fellas, what a time. What a time. You've heard us talk about Nokian Tires a lot this year. NokianTires.com/SZD being the place to go there. Fill out a college football road trip map. Have fun. You don't know a thrill until you have raced cars. Well, you're not racing anybody else but yourself. But you've raced winter tire cars on an ice track and non-winter tire cars, because Nokian basically invented the winter tire. Nokian is the inventor of the winter tire. So we tested like going really fast and braking and slaloming on a non-winter tire and just like skidding out everywhere, but fortunately with nothing to hit, and then doing it with a Nokian Hakkapeliitta, their winter tire. And it was just a different deal. It was just a lot of fun. So appreciate Nokian having me there, and looking forward to sharing more, soon about the kind of stuff that we do with them. If you look on our Twitter as well, you'll see videos of me going, race car mode on the ice. So thanks a lot to Nokian for having us there, and our friends Wes and everyone else at Nokian. Godfrey, you're excited. It's Conference USA review time.
What? Oh yeah, I'm thrilled. You got to shine it on for the G5. Okay. I had what I just call it secret COVID because I didn't test positive, but I was sick as a dog a couple weeks ago and missed the show, and y'all did the American, right?
Yes.
Okay. That sucks because, it's my baby. But the way I am approaching this, and this is just my personal philosophy, is that I am talking about the conferences that will be, because this is supposed to be somewhat forward facing. I know it's a year in review in hindsight. So I was just thinking as I looked over my notes for this, I am like, I didn't even think about UTSA relative to Conference USA. I did a little bit of North Texas, mainly because you got to put something in there. It's Conference USA. Shit's pretty thin. But I want to set the groundwork here. Like, if I was talking about the American, I would be thinking about UTSA now, if that makes sense. Alex, with that being said, you want to gush about a team that's not going anywhere, that just loves being in Conference USA, that didn't try to go to the MAC, just happy as a clam. Tell me about them toppers.
Yeah. So Western Kentucky may have become the best transfer portal car wash, if you will, in America. Like the best, just churn them in, churn them out, transfer destination in the country, certainly in the G5 and certainly on offense. The problem with building your team in the transfer portal is that you can overdo it and you find yourself with no continuity from year to year and no player development happening because your freshmen and sophomores aren't getting reps and you're flying by the seat of your pants every season and eventually you get fired. It feels like we're being mean, but like, again, the classic example of this last few years in the G5 would be like Texas State. And they're not the only ones. A number of teams have, I mean, we just saw this with Matt Wells at Texas Tech. A couple of years ago, we may be seeing this in progress at Indiana now. All kinds of schools get into this kind of problem. Western Kentucky's recent arc here, if you go back and look at it. 2020, they suck. It's a bad year. It's a weird year, but like they're just not any good whatsoever. They try to figure out, that was Tyson Helton's, I think, second year on the job after Mike Sanford got fired pretty quickly. So they're like, all right, how are we going to fix this thing? 2021, they just portal everything. So that they bring in Bailey Zappi, the quarterback from what was then Houston Baptist University, along with Zach Kitley, who's the offensive coordinator there, and Jarrett Stearns, a receiver there. This is the CVS Stadium in Houston that we've talked about so many times. They also get a huge year that year from Mitchell Tinsley, a transfer who had come in from JUCO a year before. But basically, you know the story. Like Bailey Zappi sets the passing yardage record for all of FBS history. Jarrett Stearns has a massive year, the wide receiver. Zach Kitley is the toast of the town as the offensive coordinator. And then everyone leaves. Kitley gets the Texas Tech job, offensive coordinator. Zappi goes and gets drafted by the Patriots. It's now Zappi hour in New England. Tinsley actually goes off. He goes off to Penn State, and you're thinking, wow, all right, Western Kentucky had a fun year. They went from 5-7 to 9-5, but that was that, right? Like it was one year, it was fun, it was over. And then 2022 happens, and Tyson Helton just does the same thing again, and basically an equal measure of success. Austin Reed, quarterback, comes in from West Florida. Remember the startup program from around Pensacola that has won a D2 national championship just in its first couple of years. He plays quarterback. There's a new offensive coordinator, Ben Arbuckle, works great. Malachi Corley, who was actually already in the program, wide receiver, becomes maybe the best receiver in Coosa. They get a couple of 800-plus yard seasons from more transfers, one from WMU, Jalen Hall, and one from Oregon, Dawood Davis. And they get more from a receiver from Akron, who they took, Michael Matheson, as well. So very, very portaled up offense again. Works great. They destroy 10-win South Alabama and a very good defense in the NOLA Bowl. And it's successful. And Austin Reed's actually coming back for yet another year at Western Kentucky. They're going to have a new offensive coordinator again because I think their guy went to Washington State, their new offensive coordinator. But like these guys are becoming just a plug and play, even with different offensive coordinators, operation that can score tons of points and win 9 games and have a good time playing offense in a pretty lousy conference, and pretty good place to be. So Western Kentucky, you figured out the formula, and I think that is very impressive.
I always get Austin Reed confused with Austin Davis, the former Southern Miss quarterback. Yeah, like it just drives. Yeah, who's now a coach, by the way. Yeah, it was like I had a cup of coffee as Auburn's OC. Like it or not, and maybe this is why I set the CUSA thing up with a preface, and I don't want to spend a lot of time on this. The Rose is liberty for the future. This is the only Conference USA program with enough money and stability to act like a relevant G5. I guess what I'm doing is sort of betting against everything that Alex just laid out, which is that you can't hit 21 that many times in a row, which is what Western Kentucky has done to maintain relevance. But what they've done is very impressive, and I don't want to take away specifically from help, like his ability to scout this out and to maintain locker rooms in this much transition. So you're talking about play callers and skill position guys. That's a fast way to change the complexion positively or negatively on your roster and your culture and your locker room. So bully for him. Part of this Liberty thing also is that they went and got a guy who is woefully undervalued as a head coach in Jamie Chadwell because he did have a mullet. And because he is a redneck and the pistol stuff and all of that at Coastal, he had a chance. There was a window there for a lot of Power 5 programs to give him a look that for whatever reason they decided not to. It was always a culture fit, right? Beamer Chadwell, we've talked about that. They've got him now, and they're very, very confident and set up for the near future because look at the landscape they're playing in. They financially can afford to just be better than Conference USA for the near future. And here's what's going to happen. And this is why Liberty is like technically a positive here is that because they've spent their way to a certain level, Chadwell's gonna pivot out of Liberty to another job. He's gonna. And then it's not going to be, oh, well, dastardly Ian McCall got dastardly Hugh Freeze out of the, and they were in the controversial corner. Now it's going to be Liberty can platform you. It's going to be that, whether we like it or not. They've spent their way to relevance, which is what we all kind of quietly kept warning everyone about. Not so quietly.
I mean, it's their league.
It's their league.
We'll talk
they
about,
bought their
I'll talk
way
about
in.
this. I think there's a counter case for Conference USA with Liberty, but I hear what you're saying and I don't even really disagree with it. But Richard, give us your rose for Conference USA.
I'm taking Rice making a bowl game for the first time in like a decade. I have my opinions about 5 and 7 teams or 5 and 7 teams in bowl games.
Yeah.
I get it. So I get it. But hey, man, they made a bowl game. Like at the end of the day, for that program to do that, it was neat. It was neat. And I will take that.
Yeah, they're just kind of hanging around, right? Like,
sure are.
Like,
sure
that's
are.
just
They were this was supposed to be talking about platform or maybe springboard, catapult, whatever you want to call it. When the David Shaw rumor started, this was going to be Mike Bloomgren's job, and then it wasn't. So I thought that was very telling. This is a guy who knows people in the Stanford athletic department and was supposed to be the inside track replacement.
Nominally, progress is being made here. Nominally. It's slow.
This is a shit job, dude. It's a shit job. It's just...
It's going to probably pay a little better now because they're going to the American.
Like I'm not even going to hold it. I don't hold it. Like I don't care about Bloomgren one way or the other necessarily. Like this is a hard job. And Rice has a weird mixture of like Texas expectations and like Ivy League brain. And they've never been able to square that circle. And like, it's just, I don't see that changing just because they're in. And look, the new American still needs a doormat. So congrats.
Sure. Also, as Richard has in the notes, UTSA was the gold standard of this conference by the end. And
but they're gone. Like it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
But Jeff Traylor figured it out, and UTSA had another really good year. Frank Wilson is going to be back. Frank Wilson, geez, you get it. That's their former head coach, Frank Wilson. Frank Harris is going to be back.
So many LSU shots today.
Frank Harris is going to be back for another year. They're a really good quarterback. Frank Wilson not back, and his tenure did not age the best when Jeff Traylor came in to UTSA. But you can't do it much better than the Roadrunners did it the last couple of years in this league. All right, my bud case is for New Mexico State coming into this league. They might be okay for a few years under Jerry Kill, who's a pretty good football coach, in my opinion, and was kind of the definition of like a fine, serviceable Big Ten coach for a while, and really changed a lot of things when he got to New Mexico State. They changed significantly on tempo. They became a much slower tempo team. They started to play, a bit more, I don't know, how would we put this? Minnesota ball almost. Like they started to just play a much more restrained, slow down the game type of style. And it worked out pretty well for New Mexico State. They played in a bowl game for just the second time in 70-ish years. And looked
they
pretty good. They had the one
with Doug Martin, and basically that's it. So
they won that bowl game against Bowling Green. They won 7 games. They destroyed Liberty in Lynchburg as Hugh Freeze had one foot out the door going to Auburn in the last week of the regular season. And I think that there's just a general look for Conference USA that they could have done worse for the additions they made. I do think the entire thing is kind of a sad Frankenstein's monster because there's not a lot of cohesiveness here between these schools. But, you have the New Mexico State UTEP rivalry in your league now. Like that's something. Like that's a thing that you can hang your hat on, that at least you've got a unique college football thing in your league. And, NMSU looks like a better bet to be a decent member of this league for a few years than it did when they were added. So yeah, that's a bud. I'll take NMSU as the bud. By the way, NMSU, a mess, right? One of the messes of the century unfolding with their men's basketball program. We do not have time, but Jesus,
I've only seen it
cannot be working in
social.
college athletics ever again. A lot of people.
Yeah. I've only seen it on social, so I do not know.
We got a capital M mess at New Mexico State.
Bud, again, forward-facing Bud. The FCS teams that are transitioning up, so Jacksonville State, Sam Houston State, those are the ones I'm really kind of focused on. They're going to bring things that this conference, finger quotes, needs, which is resources, and I mean players, talent, recruiting footholds, locations, geography. They need to be in Alabama. They need to be in Texas that isn't UTEP, East Texas. I don't know if you're going to have an App State situation. Like Georgia Southern and App State came in with tradition, winning cultures, House of Fire. App was the much better short term at that. That's why Georgia Southern got away from the triple, et cetera, in the Sun Belt. If you had a sort of ready to wear kind of success right now, I would bet it's Jack State just because you have Rich Rod in. Casey Keeler feels like a transition coach, and I don't mean that to be like that is a pejorative.
He did win a ship at Sam Houston.
I know, and that's why I'm kind of couching it. They had a weird sort of last year. They were 5-4 in the WAC. They technically didn't play any they got wrapped up in this another FCS situation. So schedule wise, it was a weird year. He's had success there. Again, though, what you often see at these jobs is and this is why App is an outlier. You see the coach come in who had the historic FCS success at that program, and then eventually they're going to go with a guy who's an FBS head coach or an FBS or more FBS adjacent in his experience. So, I mean, Rich Rod for obvious reasons there, and the fact that he can go and recruit in that little pocket of it's basically Jacksonville State. If you're not familiar, is southeastern Alabama, kind of in that Troy range, and there's a lot of football players there. That's why they moved up. So this is a Bud in the most Bud sense. We can barely see it emerging, but I like the idea of adding the Gamecocks. Also, they're a week 0 game against UTEP. Might go to that.
Intriguing. That's actually a kind of interesting week 0 game.
Yeah. Although I do have a home game walking distance from my house that week, which is Hawaii and Vanderbilt.
Slightly concerned about those two teams coming in. We'll talk about it at some point. My Bud's going to be Liberty. I mean, from a pure football sense, and we talked about this, 5 or 10 minutes ago. This is their league. It is set up to be their league. So figure it out. So
this is why they're actually my thorn. And we've talked about Liberty a million times. You know how I feel about them negatively is the answer. But just think about this from a pure, real politique standpoint and just organizational incentives for Conference USA with Liberty coming in. I don't really get it. And here's what I like. Liberty invests in football. As far as we can tell, they're a private school and you lack a certain level of specificity to know these things with private schools, but they invest in football at a different level than Conference USA schools, a much different level. They are going to come into this league, and I agree, dominate this conference. That doesn't mean they're going to win it every year, but it means they are going to be by far, maybe not by far, but no, maybe by far. Maybe by far.
I was going to say,
maybe by
right.
far,
So
because everyone who would
problem?
contend is leaving. So it's
yeah.
So if you're another Conference USA school, it's not like Liberty is a huge media rights booster to you. I mean, there are not that many Liberty fans in the world. It's not like they are Notre Dame. They want to be Notre Dame for evangelicals, but it's not like that translates to a Notre Dame like television audience or a Notre Dame like streaming audience.
No, it definitely does not.
It definitely does not. So you're just bringing in this wolf basically that's just going to eat you, and also that has nothing institutionally in common with you. They are. As we've talked about, Liberty.
Pause. What? There's no alignment institutionally with this group of schools.
Exactly.
But I would say this.
So one can't be an outlier.
The Mountain West was and is not worse off because Boise ran it for a decade. And I'm not saying Liberty's going to pull a Boise. I'm not saying Liberty's going to go 12-0, 12-0, 12-0 every single year, scare a 12-team playoff berth. I don't know that to be true, but there is something to be said for these leagues to have one standard bearer. Now, the teams and the fan bases in those leagues would not say that because obviously you have a team in that league. You want to be competitive. You want to be able to win it. If you're one of the other 10 or however many the hell.
Sure.
But from a public perception standpoint, there is something to be said for having one team in a G5 league that is your standard bearer that everybody can look at and say, all right, cool.
Godfrey, I would put this point to you. And Richard, it's a fair point, but I would say this. I agree that Conference USA, much like the American, lacks any kind of cohesive regional identity. The hint, as we've said before, is that if you put America or USA in your conference name, it means you really do not have any ideas about what binds your schools together. I fully believe that. But
they're still not comparable.
But like you could see if you looked hard enough in this conference, like I just mentioned New Mexico State and UTEP, that's an import of an existing rivalry, a serious rivalry that those schools care about. You know, you could certainly imagine like Jacksonville State and Sam Houston as FBS schools playing a regular competitive series that is a lot of fun.
Mm-hmm.
You could squint and you could see.
What's your point?
I'm saying that you have some institutional similarities sort of between some of these schools, even though the geography doesn't make a ton of sense for this league. But like Liberty is just totally different than basically any other school that plays college football.
They're not,
and they're going to kill you, and they're going to crush you. So like, what are we even like?
They're not culturally. You needed their money. You needed their money.
Do you?
That's the biggest. Yes, the fucking Conference USA is underwater.
But in what way is Liberty going to make these schools richer? Like, is Liberty going to enrich significantly the media rights fight?
I'm not saying they are. They just didn't have a choice. They took someone who had money who was interested in them, and Liberty was the only gentleman caller. That was it.
Okay.
Everything else was let's band together to survive or get FCS transition teams. And by the way, no member of the going into 2023 Conference USA is thinking about brand cohesion as a conference or any kind of like short or long-term development of history or tradition here. What they are doing is using Conference USA as an FBS audition platform for the next time things shake up. We're talking about a conference that's not going to exist.
I had a conversation, this was just yesterday with somebody, about these leagues. And when you have these leagues, obviously when you have the Big 12, obviously the infighting with who's coming and going in that league, all that kind of stuff. When you're in one of these leagues, you can't really pitch a fit about somebody leaving. Why? Because you want to leave too.
Yes, you're just trying to get by, dude.
You would love to leave in someday too, and you don't want it to be made difficult for you to leave if such an opportunity were to present itself in the future. But the history of Conference USA is the history of turnover, tumult, and teams leaving. Go look at who was in this league in 2005.
It's pretty fun. Yeah, it's a league that is almost like a hostel for travelers going through Europe or wherever.
I mean, it doesn't exist because it was the least protected, because it was the least branded. It's never been good at this. It's always been an audition pivot point for schools to go on and be like, we talked about this. Didn't we talk about this last week?
Yeah, we did.
Army was in it. Houston was in it. They're in the Big 12 now. Like
Louisville.
Southern Miss, Louisville's in the ACC. Yep. I think Conference USA, I would bet, has produced more other conference members than any other conference I could think of. Because you got Big East membership in there too.
I look forward to revisiting this as the offseason goes on and as the new Conference USA takes shape, because whether it's ugly or not, and it is kind of ugly, it's at least emblematic of some things about the ways college sports have changed. Superlatives for this conference: ugly game of the year. It was kind of a great game actually, but it was certainly ugly. Week 1, FIU falls behind 16-0 under Mike McIntyre to Bryant, an FCS team, comes back to beat him 38-37. One of those nice games with 200 penalty yards between the two teams. That's always fun when there's that kind of slop going on. I'm also not making I'm not going to say FIU is a bud for me here because they won 4 games and the school doesn't care about football, or at least hasn't cared about football. But that they improved. And I wonder a little bit if with FAU getting up and out of this league, if that might wind up being kind of a kick in the ass for FIU, which came into existence as we've discussed on some Patreon shows before, at the same time as FAU, kind of as almost sister programs in a way. Does FAU getting that promotion jolt some people at FIU the way that you might be seeing at, for instance, USF right now with UCF going to the Big 12? I don't know, but I wonder. It's a thought that crossed my mind. So that's my ugly game of the year. Anyway. Steven,
mine
go ahead.
was just very simple, only because you had so much potential. You had the ability to make a statement. You had the ability for the coach not to get fired even at this point. And that's what happened with Seth Luttrell and North Texas losing 58-27 to UNLV, a team that ended up becoming a lame duck as well. It's just a game that doesn't make a lot of sense when you go down the stretch and see how UNT came back and acquitted themselves pretty well. All things considered, the bottom line was the university just knew that they were not UTSA. They saw UTSA out UNT them. We've talked about this with South Al and Southern Miss before. Same situation here. I just feel like the UNLV game allowing 58, that was sort of the nadir.
I'm going to take Western Kentucky UAB. It was, look, UAB's offense figured out ways to get it done. I think Alex is going to talk about Dwayne McBride, who was certainly a bright spot on this team and in this league this season. But this was a football game. Combined, I think UAB went 5 of 12 passing. That's it. And look, UAB did not do a lot of throwing of the ball this season. We understand that. But they had one quarterback who went 3 of 10 in this game. Both teams combined for like 200-ish passing yards. A lot of turnovers. Big grounded pound ball game in this game.
Richard, give us your actual game of the year in Conference USA.
Actual game of the year has to go all the way back to week 1, actually.
Good
Houston
call
UTSA.
here. Yeah, good call here.
Yeah,
I watched
Houston,
every bit of
UTSA.
this.
This one goes into triple overtime. Yeah, this one goes into triple overtime. Houston itself had a furious fourth quarter comeback where they came back from 2 scores to tie the game. We thought win the game, but then UTSA came back, kicked a field goal to tie the game and sent it to overtime. And then they traded in overtime, and Clayton Tune won the beginning of 2-point conversion of Palooza at the end there.
Alamo-Dome was rocking.
Yes.
Alamo-Dome was on fire. Mine is trying to build positive things for the future, and since I've been a dick about the Conference USA future all segment long, it's the New Orleans Bowl. Western Kentucky won 44-23 over our. We've acknowledged that South Al and Sun Belt, they're on the up, they're on the swing. Like, this is I have a lot of caveats when I measure performance by a non-playoff or just non-relevant bowl game, but this is a Conference USA. We're grading on a curve, and this I think was a nice hopeful piece for the future. If you're not Liberty, because as Alex laid out, like Western Kentucky's ability to like build and rebuild and rebuild and rebuild, like that's one of the few things you got going for you.
Dudes of the year in this conference, as Richard alluded to, I am taking Dwayne McBride from UAB because once again, I love outliers. 1,700 rush yards this year on 7.4 per carry. Nobody,
he was insane.
Yeah, nobody else in this league got over 1,004 yards, so he was 700 clear of anybody else. And that player, by the way, Larry McCammon III at FAU, played one more game than the 11 that Dwayne McBride played. Crazy running back, should be talked about, I think, in a similar breath to Tyjae Spears at Tulane in terms of just like sometimes you see these G5 running backs who are just better than everyone they're seeing. Also in Spears' case, remember, he also destroyed some of the Power 5 teams that he saw this year as well. But Dwayne McBride was awesome and consistently awesome. 120 plus yards in every game he played except LSU, which what are you going to do? When you're UAB and you're playing in Death Valley, you're going to have some problems blocking some people. Put 272 on Louisiana Tech and was the number 2 rusher in the entire country, only behind an Air Force running back. You can probably guess that on a yards per carry basis, Dwayne McBride exceeded what might be achieved at a service academy running the triple option. It's a great season is what I'm saying, and a bright spot in a kind of mediocre and then perplexing year for the UAB Blazers. Dwayne McBride.
Katie Davis. I'm always biased towards defensive players when we talk about group of 5 conferences because I feel like there's an unfair rap that these leagues aren't playing defense. That's not true. He was top 10 in the nation, 71 solo tackles, had a sack, forced fumble, and an interception. Has declared for the draft. Also, when I was doing research on him, he was conference player of the year. That's how I first got his name. But when I was doing research on him, it popped up on TMZ that my guy, who has not been drafted yet, has already been to Atlanta, Scooby the Jeweler. And if you know anything about Atlanta, that's one of the premier jewelers in the city of Atlanta, to create himself a 35 karat diamond necklace with sapphires of a shark, because that's how he plays. You might think, as the elder statesman of this podcast, that I would wag my finger at a young man doing something foolish with his money at that age. But you know what? I've got tattoos on my back that look like shit from when I was that age. So what can I say except enjoy your necklace, and I hope you get drafted high.
Damn, I learned something new today about you, Steven.
That I have tattoos.
I didn't know you had them on your back. I don't know. But I mean, I'd love to see
certainly will be taking Frank Harris. I am relatively sure that Frank Harris was in this category last year, if I recall correctly. He put out another fantastic year, another fantastic season. 4,000 yards passing, 600 yards rushing. He is coming back as well. They are going to run this thing back next year. I cannot wait to see Frank Harris. That'll be a lot of fun.
And UTSA has been a lot of fun in a lot of ways for a lot of years. Conference USA will miss them. And we'll see what the review that we put forward for this conference looks like in 2024. It's going to be a lot different than the one that we just did. So that is another week of conference reviews here. We have a couple more still to come. I think 2 more conferences to do that we will get out of the way next week. And we look forward to doing that. Before we sign off for this week, in far more serious terms than anything college football, we find ourselves for the second time in 3 or 4 months now, talking about a mass shooting on a college campus, one where we know people, where you probably know people, and where it feels like it could have been your school. It could have been any school, because it could have. And we're thinking a lot of our friends at Michigan State. We know some of you are listening to this show now, just as we know that there are people in our world who unfortunately heard us talk about the same thing when it happened at UVA 3 months ago. It's unacceptable. Unfortunately, it continues to be accepted by too many policymakers in this country that this kind of thing happens here regularly. Uniquely terrible American problem. And I'm so out of things to say that I don't have much to say on our podcast other than that we love you and we're thinking about you. And if you've been affected by this in any way, as so many of us have, we hope that you're taking care of yourself and finding the support that you need. Thank you so much for listening.